Hey friends, Tashin here, coming from you from a very beautiful rural place in the Pacific Northwest, relatively rural anyway. I feel happy to be outside. I feel calm and grounded, but also heavy. And there's things on my heart and mind, and also excited and alive and happy. There's good things happening. And all of those are there at once. I love that the heart can hold all these things. And it's always good to be out for a walk to let the energy move, and it's warm and sweet outside. Feel loved by the earth and by the land and the trees, the sky, the birds, the air, and God. A lot of times I speak poetically about things because it feels truer than something more literal or specific. I feel happy to be alive, and I feel blessed in so many ways, and I feel connected to so many people on the whole earth, and the animals, the trees. They feel like friends. That's what it's like to be Tashin anyway, especially walking in the woods. Anyway, that's a very heart-based check-in to start this video. It feels important because there are some difficult emotions moving through my body, and people are attuned, they can sense if something like that is present, and I just want to own that before I start talking about something that's on my mind. I want to be embodied and be coming from my heart and own everything that's there. On this walk, I want to talk with you about a skill that I have been cultivating for a few years, arguably much longer. One that I don't feel especially good at. I really don't feel especially good at this. I do not think I'm anywhere near the world's best person at this, but it's like one of those skills that you just have to cultivate, Like everybody should get decent at cooking, and everybody should learn to do at least one pull-up, There's a lot of things that's just like a good baseline, and this is one of those baseline skills, I think, for a mature adult in the modern world. At least this is how I see it. It's my perspective. Feel free to disagree with me. And I don't even know what to call the skill other than having like global awareness. Having global awareness. Let's call it that. And it occurred to me, this is a little bit like, this is very bleeding edge thought, but like, it occurred to me, I've done a lot of parts work in internal family systems, and a lot of my friends and peers have done a lot of that work. It's been so valuable to me. And that's like looking inwards at different parts and trying to harmonize, trying to unify, trying to integrate, trying to resolve internal conflict and make sense of different perspectives and all of that. And that's so important. I feel like that's where so much of my power comes from, is from that unification and that harmony, that inner harmonization that's been done. Of course, there's conflict still and parts I haven't explored and shadows and stuff, but I've done what I can to the best of my ability. And that matters. That really matters. No effort is wasted. And this is kind of like the outwards facing, zoomed out version of the same thing. Like internal family systems, parts work is one individual and there are many parts within, and it's looking inwards. This is looking outwards to the maniness that is the world, the complexity that is the world, and just wrestling with that. And to me, at least, that feels very daunting in a way that internal parts work doesn't at this point. I feel very okay with internal conflict, even if it's uncomfortable or confusing. Because it's like, well, it's just me. It's all me, and I love myself, and I feel like I have enough internal buy-in and love. I don't know, probably there's some monsters lurking in there I haven't found yet. I gotta be humble here, but so far so good. And I feel like, I was having some inner conflict recently, and I was doing some parts work about it. Some really incredible parts work. It's like, wow, that is such a good modality. I was just doing a session with Theo on Twitter. And like, at the end I was like, have you ever done a session like this? He was like, no. And during it, I was like, wow, have you ever worked with like this many parts at once? And he was like, no. I think it was an unusual session for both of us. But yeah, and took me to some really beautiful places. But yeah, even when there was inner conflict and a lot of multiplicity, there was a lot of buy-in where like my parts trusted me to hold them well and to love them and listen to them and respect their knowledge and their wisdom and their gifts. And then just listening to that and then listening to all of them, including all of them, kind of popped into some kind of something. It was good. It was real good. Let's see, what do we have coming up here? A friend with a dog. Anyway, that feels, I don't know, I put a lot of work into that, and it feels like I feel this sense of safety and love and confidence around that, even if it's difficult sometimes. Like I know how to do that work. With this global counterpart, I'm like, oh, I'll make this face. Like, oh boy, here we go. And, but it needs to be done. It needs to be done. And so this is a really long-winded way of getting at something that's in one dimension very simple, which is paying attention to what's happening in the world and trying to make sense of it. And, having like an OODA loop, basically, of observe, orient, decide, act, and having good OODA loops around that. The OODA loop obviously is much, 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 much more complex and dense and meaningful than the simplified just 4 acronyms, as anyone who's read any John Boyd at all would know. But yeah, like having good OODA loops about the world and the state of the world and what's happening and trying to make sense of it. And the thing that's difficult about that is it's so vast and so complex and so emergent and so multifaceted that it's just intrinsically impossible. Like you're already failing before you even start, but you have to try. And it's like the Bodhisattva vows in that way. It's like there's so many beings and you vow to liberate all of them. And it's like, well, at least for me, I don't know. But here we go. Maybe there's a Bodhisattva out there that has a better sense of what that means. I don't know. But we just have to try. We're on this planet, we're on this earth, and we're connected to people, and we're in community, and we're in nations, and we're just thrown into that, and somehow we're making sense of all that. And everybody's got their own sense to make, and everybody's got a story, and there's sort of some default narratives that are flying around, and you can pick one if you want and ride the wave of that. But like at a certain point, it just stops being satisfying for me. At least for me, that was my experience. Like, I feel like there's way too much complexity to just say all this or all that or good or bad or whatever, and just to try to make one's own sense. And so I've been doing this for a few years, and that's part of my work, really. I have a video elsewhere about like making your own job description. I feel like part of my job description is just to stay apprised of what's happening and try to make sense of it. And that's difficult because there's so much happening all the time, and there's so much happening with politics and the economy and culture and like technological developments and like specific people's projects. That's obviously something I like to pay attention to, is specific people that I know and what they're working on. There's local stuff. There's, I don't know. I mean, heck, there's like an energetic dimension where at least I walk into a city or a place and I feel like, whoa, there's something happening here, and it's incredibly nonverbal, but it's very palpable. And it's like, all right, well, that's part of it all. And there's an environment and, what's happening with our animal friends and the earth and the plants and the trees and the oceans and the sky. All of that's part of this earth, and just somehow trying to make sense of it all. And at least for me, it very quickly becomes overwhelming, and it's like, well, I really don't know what's going on. I feel very humbled by it. And it's good to be humbled in that way. I don't know. It keeps me honest. Like, yeah, I don't know. There's some things I feel like I know a lot about, and some things I'm like, I am so ignorant. I don't even know where to begin. But we just have to start learning, and we have to somehow make decisions in the thick of all of that, and orient towards it. So I do that, and I do that again and again. And one of the best practices I found for this, besides like reading widely and reading widely to the best of my ability. I need to be reading more. And writing's really good, making sense of things, like writing about what you learn and what you're thinking, what you're experiencing. Obviously, I do some of that. But one of the best practices I found is just talking to other people, especially having private conversations with people. Like my podcast is really good, but like private conversations with people who are also doing this work. And I have sort of a mental short list of people that I know, that I'm friends with or acquaintances with or allies with, who are doing this work. And they are plugged into some parts of the bigger picture, and different people are plugged into different parts, markets or technology or biosciences or the environment or geopolitics or whatever. And then it's tricky because typically these people also have very opinionated perspectives and strong views that they've cultivated over a long time, and they're kind of right about them, but it's also obviously incomplete and obviously imperfect, and somehow you have to make sense of that. Like, do I agree with this? Do I agree with that? Because you don't necessarily want to buy in wholesale to all of their perspectives, but you also want to sense what they're seeing. And so the best thing that I've found for that is just talk to as many people as possible and get as many people's perspectives on things. And I need to be doing more of this too, like just talking to wildly different people, and it helps to be plugged into different communities too, different scenes, different subcultures, because people care about different things and have different perspectives, and one person's crisis is another person's like, this is the best thing ever, and somehow you have to make sense of that somehow. And that's my current thinking about all this, is it's sort of like global parts work, and it requires just learning as much as you can and being humble and trying to talk to a lot of different people and hear different perspectives, and just trying again and again to make sense of everything you've heard, knowing it's not good enough, knowing your map is definitely not the territory, knowing it's far more complex than you're imagining, and then still just somehow making decisions based off of that and being humbled by it. Like, you're doing it wrong if you're not being humbled by it, as far as I'm concerned. Like at local systems, like maybe you can have a good enough map to know what's happening, maybe. But like, as soon as you expand the scope to global everything, it's just like such nested, complex systems. I feel like, I don't know. I'm suspicious if someone's like, I've got it all figured out, which people do come across that way sometimes. I'm sure I come across that way sometimes. I do not have it all figured out. Anyway, those are my thoughts for today about global awareness and global parts work and just sense making. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. If you have any book recommendations or authors you'd like to suggest, or people worth paying attention to, or people you'd want me to talk to, I don't know. I'm open to that. Very busy person. Typically the people who do this are very busy people. I'm increasingly a very busy person, but there we are. So I'd be curious to hear what thoughts come up for you hearing all this, and I'm sending you love wherever you are. Take care, friend.